There we go.
All right, can everyone see that?
Yes,
I'm gonna,
you're good,
okay.
Jane.
All
Thank you.
right, perfect. All right, so my name is Jane Chirico, and today I'm going to be talking about permaculture and agroforestry. So they're two very sustainable agriculture practices. Before I get into that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself. So, like Harriet mentioned, I do work at Burroughs. You may recognize me from there. I'm going into my third summer this year. You may also know me as Pat Marshall's granddaughter. I know she's a part of this group. I'm not sure if she's here this morning. Um, but yeah, I'm also a student at the University of Guelph. I'm currently in my third year. I did a little bit of a program switch, so I'm kind of halfway between second and third right now. But I'm currently in a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture. I'm majoring in horticulture and hopefully going to get my certificate in organic agriculture. So for those of you who are wondering, horticulture, the definition of horticulture is the art of cultivating plants in gardens to produce food and medicinals, or for comfort and ornamental purposes. So we're agriculturists who grow flowers, fruits and nuts and vegetables and herbs, as well as ornamental trees and lawns. So what made me decide to go into this degree? Mostly for environmental reasons. I'm really passionate about the environment and sustainable practices. And I would like to know kind of where my food comes from and how to produce it more environmentally friendly. Um, yeah, so I mostly went into it to get the knowledge of how to produce my own food in hopes to one day become self-sufficient. I also just love plants and wanted to learn a little bit more about them. I figured enjoying school is a lot better than going to just get a degree. So I did switch degrees into agriculture and I'm absolutely loving it. As you can see, I've applied my knowledge quite well. I built a garden last summer, you can see on the right there. And
Yeah.
yeah, we got a pretty good harvest last year and I'm hoping to kind of revamp it this year and kind of tweak some things. So it's mostly an experiment, but it's going really well.
Now, where is that located? Where is that, Jane?
That is in my backyard. I live on Lancelot in Birchaven, and if you go by, you can kind of see it in the back.
Oh, okay. I walk by
Yeah,
there all the time.
yeah, you can see
Oh,
it. It's
gee,
beside a little, pardon?
I like your plan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's a work in progress. It was very overgrown last year, but we're gonna work on it this year. So
And who built that for you?
it was a group effort, to be honest. All four of us, my mom, my dad, and my sister, kind of helped out. My dad sort of designed it with me. I wanted to do a tiered kind of section thing, so we worked together to do it, and then I did most of the planting and maintenance and stuff like that.
Well, I understand now why it's like that because you have deer, same as I do.
Yes, yes. Deer and rabbits and squirrels are a huge problem. So the fence really helps. Yeah, it's fenced all the way around. The roofs are fenced, so it does a pretty good job, honestly. They didn't touch anything. But yeah, that's my garden. Um, and so a lot of people ask me when I tell them that I'm in agriculture, what can you do with an agriculture degree? So there's actually a lot of jobs. I asked my co-op program coordinator whether there was a co-op for agriculture, and she just flat out said no because there were so many jobs. People were wondering why would they pay to get a job if they can just go out and get a job. So yeah, there's tons of jobs. One of the coolest ones I find, it's a little bit more modern application, is the use of technology in agriculture. So there's a lot of development going on with the use of drones here, which you can see, to monitor like crop health. So they fly these drones over and they kind of measure the level of greenness over the crop to see where they're lacking nitrogen fertilizer, where the crop is unhealthy, where it's not getting enough water. They also monitor canopy, so leaf development to see which plants are full and which aren't. So yeah, you can monitor tons of stuff with drones, and there's lots of other examples of uses of technology in farming today. There's also a lot of research opportunities. So a lot of lab work is being done to find more pest resistant cultivars, to find drought tolerant cultivars, mostly for third world countries, stuff like that, especially due to the food crisis that we're currently in. So the big question today is, how are we going to feed 10 billion people in the future? So there's a lot of research going into that. There's also the typical farmer. A lot of kids in my classes come from a farming background, actually, and they're taking these courses in hopes to take over their family business. So that's definitely an option. There's lots of opportunities in agricultural business. There's lots of stuff in animal science. So there's the OVC in Guelph, which is the vet college. So there's lots of opportunities there, big animals, small animals. And there's also food inspection. So you can work with big companies in their production facilities, just monitoring stuff like that. So there's lots and lots of things you can do with an agriculture degree. It's a very open field of work. And so what I really plan to do with my studies is go down the research path. I've been introduced to a couple of professors now who have done a lot of research in third world country development. So they've traveled to places like Africa, Southern America, Asia, and they've looked at the developing countries' farming techniques. They've been researching ways to help them out using the technology that they have. So a lot of these countries don't have access to the really high-end technology that we have. They just don't have the money, or they don't have the knowledge. Is a huge gap for them. And mostly it's women that are taking care of these farms. So in a lot of these places, they run what are called home gardens. So these women are planting gardens for their family and their husbands to feed themselves, or to get a little bit of extra money to pay for the bills. And the women end up maintaining these farms because the men are in bigger cities working for money. So a lot of what these professors do, and what I would like to do, is travel to these countries and do research for them and work on how to bring new technologies to them, or improve the technologies that they have. So something like this here, you can see the man watering with these watering cans over his shoulder, which can be very laborious and painful and stuff like that. But we bring inexpensive things like these pumps here, or we can provide them with just simple tools like hose and rotary tillers that help them reduce labor, improve efficiency, improve crop health, and especially improve their safety. So that's what I would like to do with my degree. Hopefully, I also plan to use the knowledge practically, and hopefully have my own little piece of land and grow food and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it about me. Before I keep going, is there any questions about my degree or anything?
No, but I'm really, it's really inspiring that you want to do what you want to do, because it is a huge issue going forward. As you say,
Yeah.
10 billion people in the world, and really, we don't have a shortage of food, do we?
No,
Uh,
no.
And
It's a
that's the other issue.
yeah. Food waste is a lot bigger of an issue than lack of food, in my opinion, at least. There's a lot of flaws in the food system, but you need time and research and money and development to go into that. So hopefully I'll be able to put a little bit of brain work towards that.
Jane, I want to ask one question about just on the academic side. What do you see happening within the university in terms of research about climate change and drought resistant plants, or changes in soil, moving crops to different locations and that sort of thing? Is there stuff goes on at the university level that sort of addresses all these issues?
Yeah, there's tons of stuff going on. We talk about climate change. We've talked about it in every single one of my courses so far, actually. So yeah, it's a huge issue and people are very much aware of it. There's a lot of research going into new cultivars and bringing those cultivars to different countries. Genetic modification is a huge topic of debate and research, honestly. So communicating the benefits of GMOs to people is big. Giving third world countries access to those seeds is really big. And then spreading the knowledge is also really huge. So yeah, there's tons going on. It's definitely at the forefront of a lot of agriculturists and environmental sciences research. Honestly, it's huge. It's a very prominent subject. So there's hope. There's a little bit of hope there, yeah.
And you did mention GMOs. I mean, from, you know, what I see on the internet and that, you know, it's such a no thing. Do you see that as a bit of a saving grace for the future of agriculture?
Well, there's pros and cons for sure, because GMOs do help with disease resistance. They can help with drought, like you said. There's also different ways of introducing genes and breeding plants that aren't quite so unnatural to say. But I think there's positives and negatives for both. I think, honestly, like I said, I think addressing the food waste portion of the issue is what really needs to happen. But for the meantime, these are more faster solutions that are more feasible and that I think are a little bit more accepted by governments and stuff like that, because they're a lot more faster. They're more applicable right now. You know, like it takes a lot less time and money to introduce a GMO seed than it does to completely rearrange our food system. So I think there's a little bit of promise there for sure. I don't think it's the solution, but I think it's definitely a stepping stone for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Does anyone else have any questions before I keep going? I don't think I can see the chat. I'm not sure if anyone. Harriet, do you see anything in the chat at all?
In the chat? Nothing in the chat?
No, okay, I'll keep going then. So,
Okay.
because it is Arbor Day today, like Harriet told me, I was not aware of this actually, but it is Arbor Day, so we're trying to celebrate trees. So I'm going to talk about a couple of tree-based agricultural systems. So the first one here is agroforestry. The definition is a land use system in which woody perennials, so trees, shrubs, vines, palms, they're intentionally combined on the same land management unit with crops. So think of wheat or soybeans or pasture for animals. And then sometimes animals either in a spatial arrangement, so you can have them on the same space, or in a temporal sequence. So something like crop rotation. So you can have, you know, a woody crop for X amount of years and then use that land for something else. So it is more of a sustainable practice, meaning it can maintain itself over a longer period of time in various settings. There are different types of agroforestry. So first of all, there's an agri-silvicultural system, which manages land for agricultural use and crops. And then there's also forest products. So an example of this would be a crop like you saw here in the picture before. There's some trees there and then lavender on the bottom. So you'd be harvesting those trees, say for wood or as like an orchard or something. And then the bottom crop would be lavender. So you'd be harvesting that lavender. This is an example in a more tropical climate. So here you have those tall trees, they're banana trees. And then in the bottom, you can see little coffee trees. So they don't get too big and they like the shade. So this system kind of plays on both of those things and incorporates them together and adds a little bit of variety into the system. So you're using the land for two different things rather than just one. There's also things called silvopastoral systems, which produce both wood products and then livestock. So this is more of an example of a North American system. As you can see here, there's cattle grazing, and then you have the pine trees, which are used as wood here. And then you use the cattle for meat or for dairy. I think these are beef cows here. So This is more of a North American system, whereas the other one is more of a tropical system. Lastly, there's also kind of a combination of the two. So agro-silvopastoral systems, also known as mixed garden systems or home gardens. And these are the types of systems that I was talking about with the mostly women of third world countries. So they integrate trees and crops and animals on the same plot of land with the goal of supplying nutrients and materials and marketable products for the family. So they're more of a small scale kind of production that incorporate all three things.
Jane,
Uh,
they're encouraging that, aren't they? In you know, instead of doing a monoculture, which is just one big crop and an open, you know, the dust bowls,
yeah,
they're encouraging this kind of, what do you call it,
Yeah.
agroforestry or whatever?
yes. Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna get into that actually in the next slide. It's yeah, this is kind of more of a good step for industrial agriculture to incorporate diversity, which I'm going to talk about. It's a bit more of a manageable step rather than to just convert all to a bunch of random things on a field, you know? So yeah, this is a major step in agriculture for sure in terms of the environment. So like you mentioned, there are many benefits to agroforestry, one of them being diversity. So diversity really means variety in species, different cultivars, a variety in environments, as well as blooms and harvest times and all sorts of things like that. So really diversity is quite the opposite of a monoculture. So like Harriet mentioned, a monoculture is a single crop. So like it's one thing, say one giant field of soybeans. Rather than multiple different varieties. So monocrops are not great for the environment for many reasons. They are not very resistant to pests. They're not very good at tolerating changes in the environment. And they do destroy very important ecosystems. And so systems like agroforestry and permaculture, like I'm going to get into later, really bring this variety back, which introduce a lot of different properties back into the ecosystem. So for example, it does reintroduce that term resilience. So if one crop fails, so if you have two crops, if one crop fails, you still have that other backup crop to produce and for subsistence. So you also have that different crops attract different pollinators and different insects and animals, like you see here on the right. And attracting a variety of different animals means you're providing different species with food and shelter, and that ability to pollinate different species is also very important. So it creates a functioning system rather than a monocrop, which is just one mass plantation. The example I really like to think about is a forest. I like to ask people, have you ever seen an entire forest be wiped out by a disease or one single pest? And the answer is usually no. So those forests have evolved for thousands of years, different species, different kind of little environments. So you have a pond, you have a rocky area. And so if this one very detrimental insect comes along and wipes out one species, that forest is still going to thrive. It's still going to be fine because it has that diversity. It's able to resist change. So that's really, really important. And it's one of the factors that is really important in a system like agroforestry. So the next benefit is carbon sequestration. So on the topic of global warming, actually, right now, the temperature of the Earth is warming due to an excess of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So you can see here that little blue circle around the Earth. It's kind of like a blanket of carbon dioxide, the stuff we breathe out, the stuff that comes out of your car when you're using it, the stuff that comes out of industrial factories when you burn fossil fuels. So when that accumulates in our atmosphere, it creates a blanket. And as you can see here, the solar radiation, so the heat from the sun comes in and bounces off the surface of the earth, and it's trapped, which is what is keeping the heat in the planet and warming the planet essentially. So carbon sequestration is a process that's very important and is done by plants. So plants use that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to create their energy through photosynthesis. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that or not. But yeah, so they use the carbon to create their sugars, and they release oxygen, which obviously we breathe. So they're very important to us. And right now, global warming is an issue because that balance of plants taking in carbon and us releasing carbon is offset. So planting big plantations of long-lasting trees and perennials and stuff like that help a lot with carbon sequestration because they take that carbon and they store it in their roots, as you can see here, in their structures. So any big plants they're really helping with the carbon sequestration. They're helping take that carbon out of the atmosphere. So it's very important.
Canada has
yeah.
an objective, right, Jane, to plant how many? 2 billion, or I get 20? There was a huge number, or a trillion. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
World globally, I think it is. How many?
I'm not sure the exact number, but a lot of, countries, I think, are really trying to reduce their carbon emissions and help sequester that carbon with trees. So it's a very prominent subject. And yeah, systems like agroforestry and permaculture, like I'm going to talk about later, they're very important to those kind of processes. So lastly, another benefit is long-term production. So because trees live so long, they're in production for a very long time, rather than a crop like soybeans that you plant and you harvest the entire bean or the entire plant at the end of the season and you're done. So these trees, they get really big and they'll keep that carbon in the soil for as long as possible, which helps with long-term production. That diversity that I was talking about also creates resilience. So that system can be functional and healthy for longer periods of time, rather than a monocrop, which has the potential to be wiped out by disease or drought in a second. These systems also cycle nutrients. So you think of your fertilizer, these plants use those nutrients in the ground, and then when their leaves fall, or when their branches fall down, they decompose into the soil and then they're used up by the plants again. So these are really important functions for a long-term production because they keep that soil healthy so that you can keep producing on that land for longer periods of time. And that really is the main goal of sustainability, is long-term production. So that's very important, and it's a major benefit of these agroforestry systems. So,
Are there any questions?
yeah, that's a good time for questions.
I have one, and it's you could take that agroforestry or diversity concept and take it into your own little home garden, right?
Yep.
And do companion planting or
Yep.
create diversity within your own space, right?
Yes.
In your garden space, no matter how small it is, because there is that's my, I've just started trying to do that in my own garden.
Yeah,
And
for sure. It's a very good thing to get into for sure. And permaculture is it is a more small scale kind of system. So it does talk a lot more about home gardens, but yeah, you can definitely very easily integrate diversity into your gardens, and it's very beneficial, especially in terms of pollination. Yeah.
questions?
I have a question. It's Debbie.
Yeah.
Jane, can you talk a little bit about the bees? What is the problem with the bees? And I mean, we keep hearing what we can do, but are they still in trouble? What's your take on it, and what are you being taught about that in school?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have talked about it a couple times now. The major problem was a certain pesticide that they were using can't say I'm pronouncing this properly because it's been a couple of months, but I think they're nicotinamide, something along the lines of that. But it was a specific compound in a pesticide that they were using that were killing the bees. I believe they've banned these substances in most countries. I know you're not allowed to use them here. I can't quite remember if you're allowed to in the States or not. But the condition of the bees is improving substantially compared to what it was during that little crisis. Really what you can do is plant a pollinator friendly plant. So just get as many flowers as you can in there. Bees see mostly blue, green, and a UV wavelength. So if you can plant kind of bright bluish purple flowers, they really like those a lot better. They can't see red light. So anything along the lines of kind of orangey reddish, they have trouble seeing. So it's really recommended that you plant purpley blue flowers. For example, lavender, I know they love lavender. So that can definitely help. But I believe that the condition of the bees is improving. It's not completely back to normal, but with the ban of these pesticides, it is helping quite a bit. I know there's a few issues with other pesticides right now. I don't know them off the top of my head, but yeah, that one substance I think was the main cause of the decline of bees.
I think it's called neonicotinoids.
Yes. Yes, there you go.
And they were spraying it on annuals, but now it's banned, as you said.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Really glad about that.
Yeah, me too. Bees are, I think, way more important than a lot of people think. So yeah, hopefully that'll improve a little bit over the years, slowly. But yeah, that was a great question for sure.
I have a question, Harriet.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, so just going back a few slides where you had rows of trees. I think they were banana trees, I'm not sure. And then different crops, lower crops growing underneath them. Yeah, right there. So is it hard to harvest those crops on the ground with machinery with all those trees there? Like, does it have to be a manual thing?
Yeah, so that is a huge issue actually with these more sustainable practices and incorporating diversity. It's a big topic of debate because they can't quite use the same machinery. Planting in rows like this that are wider space does help for sure. And having 2 or 3 crops rather than, 7 or 8 is also very helpful in that sense. But yeah, it is quite difficult to get machinery in there. I do know that a lot of crops, like these are coffee trees, and their berries ripen individually. So it's not like the whole crop ripens at the same time. So yeah, a lot of those are hand-picked. They're very labor intensive coffee. But it is a big issue that a lot of researchers are trying to tackle, is how to get machinery in there, how to get these systems on a more industrial scale, because they are quite catered to manual labor and small scale production. So yeah, it's definitely a prominent issue.
Okay,
for sure.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So if there's no more questions, I'll get into permaculture. All right, so permaculture, like I said, is a more small scale system. It does have many of the benefits that agroforestry does, and it does incorporate trees and perennial plants, but is mostly based on the cultivation of just perennials. So it's a long-term system. You don't really dig up any of your plants at the end of the year. So yeah, mostly a perennial system. The definition here is from Bill Mollison. He is the person that coined the term permaculture in the 70s. And so it incorporates the conscious design and maintenance of agriculturally productive systems, which have the diversity, stability, and resilience of natural ecosystems. So like those forests I was talking about. It's the harmonious integration of the landscape with the people, providing their food, energy, shelter, and other materials in a non-material needs in a sustainable way. So the main differences between agroforestry and permaculture is that permaculture incorporates even more variety. It's done on a lot smaller scale, and it really values people and cultural values, social values, as well as the environment. So it's a bit different in terms of that. So the benefits include, like I mentioned, all the benefits of agroforestry, so diversity, sustainability, and carbon sequestration. It also integrates people, like I mentioned, and the concept of utilizing the land that you develop it on. So it really, when you're planning out these systems, you can see here, you really zone it out depending on what you have. So if you see in like zone 5, zone 4 here, there's a natural pond. So these people would, when developing a permaculture system, plant aquatic plants there. They would utilize those wet soils and plant more wet soil tolerant plants, such as like willow trees. And then if you see there's kind of a grade like a hill here over in zone 1 to the right, they would plant species with really fibrous roots that extend to keep that land from eroding and keeping the sand from washing away. So they really utilize the space that's given and kind of cater their production to the land rather than catering the land to their production. So if you were to use the example of the hill in a more industrial way, so they would probably come in and see the hill and say, oh, that's not good for what we're planting, and try and kind of level it off or terrace it. So they would try and really change the land to fit their needs rather than use the land to their advantage. So that's one of the really main differences of permaculture, which I think is very important because it maintains those natural ecosystems. So
it's working harmoniously with what's there right now?
Yeah, exactly. It's using what you've got rather than kind of trying to go against it. And it has been proven to be a lot more effective in on a smaller scale because you're not kind of trying to go against nature, you're kind of going with it. But yeah, there are also a lot of, whoa, I missed a slide there. Hold on. Where is it?
That's really interesting because it looks like in each of those zones, I mean, there's fish, there's, there's a little pond, there's, opportunities for, as you said, wet and dry gardening kind of thing.
I think she's frozen or
Frozen.
Yeah. She might have to come back in.
That's too bad. I was really enjoying that. What a beautiful.
Just hang on there. I'll try and get her back. I'll get her right now. She will probably, that happened to me yesterday too. Okay.
It's kind of nice to know that they're teaching the new students the right way, right?
Yeah. If you do, as I'm waiting for her to come back on, if you do go to Burroughs, seek her out because she's so knowledgeable. Super knowledgeable. I just got to find her phone number.
Oh, there's
Back?
There she is.
I'm back.
You're back. That happened to me yesterday too, Jane. We're glad. 'Cause this is like one of those mysteries where the television goes out and you're at the very final climax of the whole thing.
Yes, we're getting
Okay.
to the end. Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. It's okay.
Can you all see my screen again there?
Yes.
Okay, we will keep going then. Where was I?
This is really interesting information and
Well,
so
thank you.
important.
Yeah, I think it's very important too. I think, I mean, I certainly lacked this knowledge before going into school, and I think a lot of people don't get to explore it. So I'm very happy I get to share it.
Good.
But yeah, like I was saying, a lot of urban benefits. So these places act as community centers. So like think of community gardens. They kind of bring people together to help like create the system, produce food. People can learn there. So it's a good education center. And they can be very flexible too. You can use whatever species you really want. You can cater it to different cultures, different ethnicities. The concept of ethnobotany was introduced to me by one of my professors. So it's using species that cater towards different cultures, foods, and preferences. So that's very easily done with a permaculture system. It can also be adapted to many different locations through the use of diverse different plants. Like you can use drought tolerant plants in a very dry climate. Or like I said, the water loving plants can be adapted and used in a very wet soil. So it's very easily done in cities because it's very highly adaptable. And you can do it on a very small scale too. I know there's not a lot of space in large urban centers, but yeah, it can be very easily adapted to those places.
Frozen again, I think. Or is it me? Jane, I think your screen is frozen. You might have to come back in.
There's a movie by that name.
Oh, that's right, eh? Yeah. I never did watch that, did you?
I did, yeah. It's good.
Harriet, is that something like the guy down at the community garden? You know, remember we went there and he had that irrigation system where he had.
Yeah, that's Damien McShane. I have that
Yeah,
in.
and he had some of those plants higher up and then watered them and the water flowed down to the other ones. Do you remember that?
Very, I have a visit. I was hoping we'd get to visit there, but I have to wait till May 20th to see how this all unfolds, eh?
Yeah, I think it was one of the workers that came over from, I don't remember where.
From Syria, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had developed that system over there.
Jane is just so knowledgeable. Judy, she'd be a wonderful guest for I'm sure you're thinking about that for the Heritage Gardeners.
And great that she could find local summer work related to her schooling.
I think that was a catch for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's excellent, very helpful in the when you're there, you know, and you need some help. She's got the knowledge to help you, you know, figure out what your landscape, you know, what you should do and your plans, and you know, she's got all of the tools for sure. Now, I don't know if we've lost her or not.
Marshall, you must be very, very proud.
Yes.
Hello.
You're back.
I don't know what's going on here.
It's not an unusual thing these days, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. My internet is very iffy most of the time, so we'll see. I might leave my camera off just to see if that helps.
Okay. Are you on Kojiko, Jane, or what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be it.
Yeah.
But I'll keep going. I'll go fast and see if I can. I'll beat it this time.
We've got about 15 minutes, so.
Okay. Let's see here. So I can just give you quickly a few examples of some permaculture centers that I know of, and agroforestry actually. So there's a food forest in Guelph. that I wasn't too familiar with until a few months ago. Yeah, so it's a community food forest, lots of volunteer opportunities. It's just off of campus. And yeah, it provides food to the campus restaurants, which is kind of cool.
Wow, it looks almost like a unorganized, but I'm sure
Yeah. Yes, looking at permaculture systems at a glance, they look very, very unorganized. I can tell you that. But it's mostly just because of how many different species there are in there. It looks kind of overcrowded. But I can assure you, they're very self-sufficient. They function quite well, actually, over time. They learn to kind of sustain themselves. But they do look very unorganized, I will admit. And yeah, another example actually is Sweetman Gardens in town.
yes.
My dad has told me a lot about them. They are very self-sufficient in terms of watering and fertilizing. There's a lot of perennial species there. Again, it's open to the public. I know they run lots of workshops, community volunteering efforts. Obviously not right now because of COVID, but they are very community friendly. There's also something called the Arboretum in Guelph. It's a giant 400-acre tree forest, basically. There's over 2,000 species of different woody plants. It was established in the 70s. It's also part of the Guelph campus. So it's right there. You can go walk in there. There's different activities to do, different educational events. And it showcases the trees in their preferred environments. So lastly, we have the Guelph Agroforestry Research Station. It was established in 1987. It's a 69-acre alley cropping experiment. So like you saw with the bananas and the coffee trees, it's kind of more adapted to the North American crops. You can see different experiments of rows of trees there, mostly soybeans and different wood trees. But yeah, they did tons of experiments there. The data was used worldwide. As of 2017, it was the largest and oldest temperate alley cropping experiment in the world. And yeah, many valuable experiments were done there over the course of several years. Unfortunately, it has been shut down recently. I can't quite remember why, I think more for development. But yeah, a lot of very significant agroforestry data was obtained through these experiments. Oh, there's my urban benefits slide. So yeah, it provides food for a lot of people in urban communities, stuff like that. They're very beneficial.
Wow. That's,
Yeah.
oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's a great, they're great systems. It really brings a lot of people together when done properly, for sure. But yeah, they're pretty cool. And yeah, so I did, before I go into a few native tree species, I just want to mention a couple of ways you can do this at home. So like I said, incorporating perennials into your gardens is very essential to maintaining these sustainable systems. They last quite a long time and they cycle the nutrients, which is extremely important. Native species are also very important. I'm going to get into a few examples of those in a second. But by using native species, you are using species that are already adapted to the types of soil, the climates, the droughts, the wet soil, stuff like that, as well as native diseases and pests. So things that have evolved here know how to do or how to deal with different diseases and pests a lot better than an exotic species, say from Africa or the States. They're more adapted to dealing with these types of issues. So they are a lot more successful in our environments. So that's very important. As well, they have co-evolved with natural or native pollinators. So bees know to go to these different flowers because they're familiar with them and they've evolved with them. So they've formed very complex relationships with these different plants, which are really important to maintain. Incorporating a variety is also very important in your garden. Attracting different pollinators, like I said, different animals, really building on that resilience piece as well. Using soil building fertilizers and natural pesticides. So a lot of synthetic products, they will kill a broad spectrum of things, or they won't help build organic matter in the soil. They'll just target one thing, or they won't target one thing, they'll target a broad spectrum of things. So they kind of destroy beneficial insects, or they degrade the soils over time. They don't build on them. So using a more organic source of fertilizer like manure will really help build your soil. Same with pesticides. If you use a natural remedy, it will target only certain pests and it won't kill all the beneficial insects that can actually be very helpful in maintaining the health of your garden. So looking for more natural fertilizers and pesticides is a lot more important than I think people think, especially in terms of your soil. And then planting species that you actually enjoy, that you'll benefit from, like food-bearing plants, is very helpful. It helps with the motivation piece. I know not a lot of people are avid gardeners, which is totally fine. But if you're looking to start with something you like, something that you'll actually be interested and that will motivate you to actually get outside, rather than, you know, drag your feet to get out to your garden because you know it's good for the environment. Go for something that you'll actually benefit from. And then lastly, start small. You don't need to build an entire forest overnight. Things will build over time and time goes by quickly, as I'm sure you all know. So your garden will develop over time. Even if it just starts as a small project, it's a lot better than nothing. So yeah, that's a few ways on how you can kind of adapt this to your own garden, which I found to be quite helpful. All right, so before I go, I have a few examples of native tree and shrub species. Harriet wanted me to mention a few of them because it was Arbor Day and they are very beneficial. So here I have a list of deciduous trees. So deciduous means that they lose their leaves in the fall and then they come back in the spring. So I have a list here. I am working on developing a list of native species and kind of their attributes, so like size and flowers and things like that, that I can email to you, Harriet, when I'm finished. I should be done probably within a week, but it will mention most of these species. But yeah, so these are the deciduous trees. The ones highlight, or the ones in bold, I know we sell at Burroughs. I'm not trying to plug Burroughs, but if you're looking to buy some, I know we have these ones there.
Tulip,
So
I'm surprised to see tulip tree there.
So
Well, we're zone 4 now, right?
yeah, we're definitely zone 4. When I wasn't searching exactly North Bay,
Okay.
so it was more like northeastern Ontario. They would be a little tricky, I think, up here. And I see them a lot in Guelph. But yeah, northeastern was it was hard to target one specific area. So yeah, there's a few on here that are a little iffy, but I'll provide the zones and stuff in that list too, which will be helpful for sure, because sometimes people can't even get zone 4 to grow. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'll go over that in detail in the list for sure.
I have a serviceberry in my yard. Hydro planted and it's doing
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, they are quite nice. I have a picture coming up actually. They bloom really nicely, those guys. But yeah, in the background, you can see there's the leaves of a willow tree, which are actually quite nice. This is the peach leaf willow. They have nice dark leaves. They're flowy, but they're more bushy. And then here, the swamp white oak is one of the newer species that we have. They like a wetter soil, clearly.
Is that a bur oak? Is that a bur oak, or is it specifically swamp white oak?
The bur oaks are slightly different because we did get both. We got both this year. I
Bur
believe
oaks are planted along Oak Street in
oh
the
yeah,
parking lot.
yeah, they are quite nice. The oak trees are really nice. These ones are kind of cool because their leaves are quite a bit larger. They're not as like a pronounced oak leaf, which I thought was really nice. They have a really nice green color. But yeah, they'll fade to orange and gold like most oaks do in the fall. They'll grow quite tall. They do well in both drought and flooding environments, so they're a nice species there. And then, as you mentioned, the serviceberry, really nice ornamental trees. They get those white blooms in the really early spring, which is nice. And the birds actually really enjoy the berries. They're a very important source of food for the birds here. We also have a blue beech tree. They're a really nice option for the sun or the shade. They're very adaptable, and they get that really, really nice dark red color in the fall. There's various different colors, but mostly like that deep red. And they're quite a bit smaller compared to other trees, which is nice. Then we have the basswood and a linden tree. They're the same name, really. They're another option for a shade tree. They have really nice big leaves. They get fragrant yellow flowers in the summer that bees really like. And they're one of the faster growing varieties, which is really nice. They have a really nice teardrop shape. And then lastly, the very familiar maple. There's many different kinds. There's over 150 different species in the world of maples. And maples are usually quite large and fast growing, which is nice. They provide a really full canopy, good for shade. And they're most known for their variety of fall colors. So they range from red, yellow, all the way down to deep burgundy. As you can see here, their leaves sort of vary. And then certain maples are tapped for their syrup, as you know. So I have a few coniferous trees. I actually did make a mistake here. So that background here you can see is a tamarack tree, and it's one of the few deciduous pine or needle bearing trees. So they do lose their little needles in the fall. They turn yellow and they fall off, which is actually really nice. But I did make a mistake, I will admit. The rest.
I thought that was a conifer that lost its needles. So there you go.
Yeah, it does produce cones. And it does produce its needles, but it's not, or it is a deciduous, so it will lose its needles. You're right. I thought they kept them, but I was wrong. So these ones here are actually quite cool. They have a really soft needle to them, and they have really outward stretching branches, which are really nice. And yes, like I said, they produce a yellow little needle in the fall, and they're very, very cold hardy, down to minus 65 degrees Celsius. So they're a really good option for here. We have a black spruce, and eastern white pines are really nice as well. The black spruce is the official tree of Newfoundland, actually. They're very slow growing. They grow quite tall. They produce really dark maroon cones, kind of like the white pine does. And they have a bluish green color to their needles. Conversely, you have the white pine here. They're very, very large as well, and they get more of like a long wispy needle. They do again produce the bluish green leaves or needles, and then they can live to over 400 years old. So they're a really good species of trees that'll live forever. They'll definitely outlive me. And then lastly, we have an eastern hemlock here. They have another really outward kind of palm-like branching pattern. They grow really well in the shade, actually. They can also live upwards of 400 years, and they have like a nice little flatter leaf to them, or blade to them, which is really nice. They're kind of different compared to the other coniferous trees. And lastly, here we have some native shrubs. Again, those will be on the list, and the bolded ones I know that we do sell at Burroughs. So in the background here, you have the prickly wild rose. You might have seen them around downtown. I see them all the time, but they have white and pink varieties of the flowers. They bloom through June and July, and then produce bright red rose hips that stay on over the winter and are actually edible and very high in vitamins. They're good to attract birds and insects. They can grow up to 6 feet tall, and they're a really good hedging plant. Whoops. And then next we have the burning bush. They're very easy to care for. They get a nice full oval shape, and then they produce that really, really vibrant red color in the fall. It actually looks as bright as it is on your screen, believe it or not. They almost kind of glow. So they're really nice. And the birds do feed on the berries as well that it produces in the summer. So it's very important. So we have also a high bush cranberry here. They produce those cluster of white flowers, the little yellow center to them. They're really nice. They have like a maple shaped leaf as well. The fruit is also edible that they produce. It kind of tastes like a sour cranberry. They can handle full sun, partial shade, a variety of different soils. And then they also feed birds such as robins and cardinals during the winter months. So they're also very important species here and down south where you can find a lot more cardinals. So we also have a 9-bark. You may have seen these before. They're known for their foliage. They come right out as bright red leaves in the spring, and they'll last through to the fall. There's also some green and yellow varieties. So there's a bunch of different types of them. They're really nice. They can be quite tall or short. You can prune them. They're very variable and adaptable. So they're a really nice shrub. They also produce clusters of pink and white flowers, which are very showy and do quite well at attracting bees as well. And so lastly here we have the pagoda dogwood. It's one of the newer ones that we've brought in at Burroughs. I wasn't too familiar with it, so I wanted to know a little bit more about it. They do produce a really nice dark green leaf, those ones, and they like a wetter soil. They're very adaptable actually, but they'll turn a really deep burgundy in the fall, which is really nice. And you can see the white flowers, they'll start to appear in the spring. And they also have a really nice horizontal branching. So they'll provide good shade and the snow falls really nicely on them, actually, I read. So they're a good shrub for the summer and the winter as well. They are quite large, so grow up to 8 to 25 feet, but they can take a bit of pruning, which is quite nice. And yeah, so that's pretty well the list of species that I have to present you. Like I said, I can email Harriet that list of native species with a little bit more information
Can you just,
later on.
Jane, do you mind stop sharing and we can see the gallery?
Yep,
There we go.
there you go.
Man, you gave us a lot of information. I'm glad we recorded this. I have to say, you were very, very thorough, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And this is from all of us.
Thank you so much.
But I
Yeah,
have a question